Ahoy nay Brunos, just letting you know that my book is out now, so you can get your copy today by checking out the link in the description below.
It's a secret.
Shut up.
Lenny and Carl, Carl and Lenny. You can't think of one without thinking of the other. They are inseparable.
I don't know where Carl ends and I begin.
As such, I've merged these two timelines into one, as I couldn't possibly split these two cuties up. I will be going over both of their lives and how they are different, even making one more popular than the other. We'll also be looking at them as childhood best buds, all the way to switching brains in old age.
Hey, Lenny.
I'm Carl.
Don't you remember? You came to the brain switching ceremony.
And therefore establish how we all want a friend like Lenny, or Carl, or whatever.
I carved that one wonderful summer.
Also, I'll examine whether there is a romance or a bromance going between the two of them, so stick around to find out, as this is the complete Lenny and Carl timeline.
Did you hear something?
No.
Did I?
I don't know.
Childhood. Pretty obvious to say that Lenny and Carl are pretty similar, but weirdly their parents shared one big similarity too. They both had small imaginations for naming their kids. Lenny Leonard and Carl Carson were born into the world, and it figures how the two may bond, as it may be over their crappy names. Carl was adopted into the Carlson family from Iceland, and they faced daily hate due to their family name. As 1,000 years ago, his ancestors were the watchmen of the coast. Iceland's safety depended on their vigilance, but the Carlson's family dropped their weapons and joined the barbarians in their lootings. Therefore, the family have been hated and scorned ever since. To escape from persecution, he and his family fled to America and settled down in the town of Springfield. It was here where he met his lifelong friends, Homer, Lenny, and Moe, and the two of them would spend summer evenings roasting marshmallows over an open fire and vowing to never end up working in the power plant factory that opened up. The only thing we know about Lenny's childhood is that he was born in Chicago and loved drawing dinosaurs. But then again, who doesn't? Lenny and Carl as young adults. In their early 20s, Lenny and Carl were part of an R&B band with Homer and Lou. But when Marge left Homer for her college professor, their sound turned much grungier to match Homer's new attitude. To reflect this edgier change, they renamed their band to Sadgasm, with Lenny the lead guitarist and Carl on bass. Their Nirvana-esque sound skyrocketed them in popularity, with hit singles including Politically Incorrect, Shave Me, and Margarine. But when Homer reunited with Marge again, he became too happy to grunge, and so the band fell apart. Very quickly, if you're enjoying the video, then I'd really appreciate it if you took the time to subscribe to the channel. Only a small portion of you who watch my videos are actually subscribed, but when you tap that red button, it lets YouTube know that you like my videos and recommends them to more and more people. So thank you so much. Anyway, back to the video. Lenny and Carl as adults. Although they once laughed at the prospect as kids, they both wound up working at the power plant. But do not think that these guys just wandered into these roles. These guys really studied for it, both obtaining a master's degree in nuclear physics. So although these guys don't seem smart at times, they are actually quite intelligent. They are often seen walking in on Homer's strange antics in the office or laughing at him.
He's about to do something stupid.
At this time, Homer, Lenny, and Carl are still best friends, spending pretty much every single day at work and their Moe's dive bar. They are so close that they even buy a lottery ticket together every single week.
4 lucky numbers for 4 best friends.
And their numbers would eventually be drawn, winning $200,000. But naughty Carl would betray their trust, stealing the money and fleeing to Iceland. Hurt that their best friend would do this, Homer, Moe, and Lenny would track him down to claim their rightful share of the money. This must have been pretty horrific for Lenny, especially by this point, him and Carl did practically everything together. And when they find Carl, they learn that he took the money away in order to clear his family's name by purchasing a lost page from the sagas. Carl then shocks them by announcing that he does not consider them real friends, as they don't share anything personal. And he's not wrong either. They basically spent around 25, if not more, years together, and they didn't even realize that Carl was from Iceland. Annoyed at Carl, Moe, Homer, and Lenny would take the scroll and cleverly learn Icelandic to translate and read it. But instead of clearing the Carlson's name, the page only confirmed that they were cowards. But despite all of this, the three would gather the whole of Iceland together and tell them how great Carl is and what he's done for them over the years, like helping them move house and leaving cans of beer in the fridge. I love a friend like Carl. And therefore, the Icelandic people officially forgave the Carlson family and their reputation was cleared. Touched by their efforts, Carl apologized and reconciled with his old friends. Lenny obviously has a deeper connection with his friends, as he's pretty well loved by the entire town of Springfield, especially the Simpsons family. So much so that when Homer lied that Lenny got caught in an accident, they exclaimed,
"Not Lenny!"
And examining this is where we start to see Lenny and Carl's differences. Lenny is shown time and time again to be more emotionally vulnerable and a giving guy. This may be due to the fact that Carl was cast out from where he grew up in Iceland at a very early age, learning quickly not to invest too much in people that may quickly turn on him.
See, this is why I don't talk much.
Whereas Lenny did things like throwing lavish parties for all of his friends just to show how much they mean to him.
Thank you for being a friend.
But despite being lovable, Lenny does have his flaws.
I have problems with...
I'm always interrupting people.
It seems that the only other person who doesn't like Lenny is his boss, Mr. Burns, and I wouldn't be the Simpsons Theory without having a few hypotheses as to why. It may be because that Lenny was 17 points above him in the secret Stonecutter Society. This rank and power allowed Lenny to take advantage of his lofty position to quite literally kick Monty around. Or it could have been the time that he had the audacity to give Burnsy a groovy thumbs up. Whatever the reason, Burns definitely hates Lenny. He's fired him twice, once in his office and the second at a company resort.
You're fired, Lenny.
Ah, nuts.
He also once instructed Homer to throw a pudding into Lenny's eye, which he found absolutely hilarious. But when Homer did the same to Carl, Burns was horrified.
What are you doing, man? That's Carl!
Burnsy just loves Carl, and so would later promote him to plant supervisor. This may be because of their varying temperaments. Burns doesn't seem the type to warm up to overly friendly people like Lenny, and may instead respect Carl, a man who keeps people at an arm's length and gets the job done. Anyway, back to Carl's promotion. His first order of business was to make Homer his assistant. But as power took to Carl's head, he soon became a demanding boss, forcing him to work day and night. But when Homer threatened to reveal that Carl had been playing hide the baguette with the French president's wife, he backed down sharpish. Now, I'm going to explore the big elephant in the room, and no, not Stampy, he left a few seasons ago. The big question, are Carl and Lenny gay? There has always been an underlying current of sexual tension between the two, and there have been many hints throughout the years to suggest that there's a bit more than friendship going on. Personally, I think Lenny is far more into Carl than Carl is into him. Lenny seems to deeply idolize his friend, yet Carl is usually indifferent. And this does ring a bell. We've seen this kind of admiration before between Smithers and Burns, which only makes this argument slightly stronger. Now we see these hints repeatedly. When a blackout hits Springfield, Lisa tells the town to look up into the stars and see their soul. And Lenny sees a big image of Carl, and Carl sees an image of himself. Similarly to how Smithers would visualize Burns consistently in his imagination. And these visions come up time and time again. When Lenny was shot in Treehouse of Horror 16, he envisions a heaven full of angelic Carls. Lenny also spent one summer carving Carl's face into a mountain in West Springfield and lovingly named it Mount Carlmore. And it's not just us either. Others in the town seem to have their suspicions too. When Homer begins to marry all the gay couples in Springfield, he then says he's gonna look for Carl and Lenny. But he is stopped by Marge, who says,
Don't you push them. They've got to work that out for themselves.
Oh.
This dynamic between the two is heavily one-sided, as Carl is a lot less enthusiastic about his friend, and at times seems pretty annoyed at Lenny. During a company retreat, the workers are put into pairs for a team-building exercise, and Carl is annoyed to have been paired with Lenny.
Nuts.
And let's not forget that the two of them have had relationships with women in the past. Lenny was once married, and we learn that Carl sung at his wedding. It looks like that they got divorced, which may explain why Lenny is seen sleeping around in empty houses, eating out of a can, as divorces can be hella expensive. Carl has also shown a lot of interest in women, once getting Homer to set him up with the president's wife in Paris. Carl has also had the same time next year affair with a woman at the annual power plant convention. But come on, who can blame the ladies for loving a bit of Carl? Even Homer deemed him as too attractive. Carl and Lenny also dated each other's sisters too, so there's that.
Is there anything better than my best friend's face on a girl body?
Now, I don't think there's a definitive answer about what's going on between these two, but I want to know what you think. Do you think there's something a bit more romantic going on, or do you think they're just close platonic friends? Lenny is a very loving guy, and Carl is his best friend. Maybe it's just Lenny's adorably sweet way of showing his friendship. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Carl and Lenny's future. Pushing 15 years into the future, Carl and Lenny have moved up in the power plant and are now executives in the company. This is while poor old Homer has stayed stagnant in the exact same role for decades. But don't get too comfortable in this time period. We're about to hop into our time machine and go 15 years into the future again. And this time we're gonna see that Lenny and Carl have switched brains. All because Lenny wanted to get back together with his wife, who was sleeping with Carl at the time, but she switched with a monkey on a Japanese game show. So after spending almost every moment in their entire lives together, the pair found a new way to get even closer. Aww.
Hey, Mo, get me another beer.
Quit making me fat.
And so that ends the complete Lenny and Carl timeline. I found myself really enjoying this one. It was a weird one because I didn't know that there was going to be so much to talk about, but actually there was. Even if they were brought onto the show to simply be part of the guys, they are actually very, very different and very, very interesting. Just a quick update, my book, The Simpsons Secret, a cromulent guide to how The Simpsons predicted everything, is now out in the US and Canada. The book is all about how The Simpsons have gotten so many things right, from presidents to Super Bowl wins. I really enjoyed diving deep into this topic and had so much fun with it. I even got the chance to pick the brains of Bill Oakley. He's of course the showrunner for season 7 and 8 of The Simpsons, so it features exclusive interview excerpts from the man himself. But ultimately, this was a real love letter to the show that we all grew up watching, so I'm so excited for you all to read it. If you want to grab yourself a copy, you can get it on Amazon on Kindle and paperback, but due to high demand and lack of HTV drivers, Amazon have had a real issue with stock. So if it happens to be sold out on there, then you can buy it from Mango Publishing themselves. The link is in the description below. And finally, I'd like to say a huge thank you to my newest Flying Hellfish members, Doug Saylor and Eli Cunham. And of course, we've got the whole band here. We've got Timothy, who else but Zane, One Drama Boy, Steve, Charlie, Sean, Stefan, Robert, Ashley, Glenford, Devin, Gadrak, Stephen, Edward, Anthony, Nicola, Jeffrey, Dominic, Cody, Chaz, Jeff, Gil, Shadu, Murray, Paul, Henry, Frank, Lucas, Zed, Omer, Eric, Thomas 88, Dave, Samantha, Rayleigh, Laurent, Daniel, Brendan, Jessica, Shavendra, Holly, Jason, Molly, Jack, and Luca.